I mean, in the past, it was someone's entire job to do that. So they were likely spending 4+ hours a day going through that before the sourcing component of their role. Now it's, maybe 20 or 30 minutes a week.
First off, TJ, I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on a quick call and to kind of share your experience. For those that don't know, obviously you're the guy I'm closest to, so I know a lot about your business. Do you mind just giving me a quick overview on what type of business model, maybe team size and approximate scale?
Yeah, sure. So we are a mix of OA and wholesale. Team size, we've got 5 right now. So 1 manager, 2 admins, and 2 sourcing VAs. And then, of course, myself, it's still very active in the business. Scale, we do roughly $5.5 million a year revenue.
Wow. It's a good sized business.
Not bad. Still room to go up.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. I know one of the things that we've definitely talked about a lot over the past year and a half is kind of the replenishment concept and being able to scale in that regard. Prior to Replen Pulse, I know you were one of our first beta testers. What were you using for inventory and replenishment management?
For the most part, we were doing it manually. So basically what I had was a system where one of my team members was looking at what was being ordered every single day and then checking the last time it was ordered by us, right, to fill our warehouse. And if we could buy it again, if it was OA or if it was wholesale, kind of what the lead time was. Obviously, I guess it worked, right? But at the same time, you're kind of brute forcing something with 10x the number of hours and inputs that Replen Pulse does. We had tried some of the other solutions on the market at the time. And, even some other tools that we still use that kind of have a replen feature. But we found for the most part, they weren't really hitting the replen numbers that our manual calculations came up with. So we didn't stick with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very similar story to how our business model was as well. You mentioned that, you did the manual numbers and they were different from the other software recommendations, and that it sounds like Replen Pulse might be sort of a solution to that. How do Replen Pulse's restock recommendation numbers compare to the results you had when you were doing the manual process?
The manual process has a little bit of a gut art to it, right? At least for me, if I'm looking at our process, I'm looking at how the number of sellers has changed in Keepa, how the velocity's changed relative to BSR, if it's the ASIN has any seasonality whatsoever. And then also looking at Amazon's data, right, for that MSKU, just to see what the sell-through rates look like, over an average of a month. And, I'd say Replen Pulse is getting us to within 5 or 10% of that, right? And frankly, again, it's a manual calculation, but I could look at the same data and probably come up with 2 answers personally that are 5 to 10% off based on how I'm feeling about that product at that given time, right? So as a tool and something that I can use to, basically get the answer that I would normally get if I have to do something manually myself, I can have my team use Replen Pulse and save a bunch of my time and build a better replen base for our business.
Good to hear that. So consistent, at least. I definitely agree from the manual perspective, especially if I feel like I have extra cash, I tend to go deeper, right? Not necessarily that because it's a better decision, but I might get a little greedy. So it's amazing how much
exactly
emotions influence.
And the tool standardizes it. So, again, it gets it there, and we're able to purchase more replenishables because it gives me more time, which at my scale is the biggest scarcity that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Buying back the time is sometimes very difficult to do. In addition to helping provide better restock numbers, as you've been going through the process, has Replen Pulse ever highlighted any items that needed replenishment that your team maybe didn't see or didn't catch originally?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess the easiest way to look at that, right, is if I'm looking at replenishing a certain vendor, a lot of times what I'll do is source or search based off of, vendor name, do an export. And like I focus first on the items that Replen Pulse, says that we need to dive through. But, a lot of times there's things that are on that list that may have like, zero quantity needed because it's old data. And if I've got some extra time or my team has a little bit of spare capacity, I can have them go back through and see, hey, are those items available again? Is it something like that we can buy again if it maybe went sour once upon a time and it's good now? So in a very, I think, easy and somewhat organized way, kind of helps you bring dead ASINs back.
Yeah, absolutely. We also recently added a column that says this is how many you've sold for the last 30 days you've been in stock. That way it helps give your team like a little bit easier to find that data, especially if you've been going in and out. And I know your space a little bit more. So like, you might get like 5 of an item, sell them in a couple days, but it'd be nice to know what you could have done if you had it for the full 30 days.
So how does that column work?
Yeah. Exactly. So essentially, say you sold over the last 90 days. All right. Say you were in stock 30 days during that time period. We capture the sales for only those 30. So we have that as a separate column now for you and your team to say, like, if you had been in stock for the full 30 days, this is what your sales would have most likely looked like.
So it's basically like snapshotted historical data that you guys hang on to.
Yep. Snapshot historical data only for the days that you were in stock. If you sold 0 that day, like we count that day, right? But trying to pull together, and that's primarily available in the repository because that way you can look back historically, especially if you don't have the data as readily available.
Cool. So basically does other stuff that I was doing manually still.
Yeah. We're constantly adding more. We're trying to like do the posts, but like, when you add like 5 or 6 columns, no one remembers them all. So but that's really cool. I know you said previously your team was like manually going through the data. How much time was your team spending on that? And how much time are you guys spending on restock per week now?
I mean, in the past, it was someone's entire job to do that. So they were likely spending 4+ hours a day going through that before the sourcing component of their role. Now it's, maybe 20 or 30 minutes a week. It's very straightforward. Especially with our vendors that have more, less seasonal items, more readily replenishable SKUs, and where there's always like good inventory. Like I can pop into Replen Pulse and, source what is, even if I'm doing it myself, right? Like $3,000 to $5,000 in profit, in probably like an hour. Like obviously I wish I could do that every single day. Like, and as we grow, hopefully we get more of that type of opportunity, but it pays for itself through time savings there, right? Like it's, as my team has scaled down, it's allowed us to maintain and still somewhat grow our foundation of replenishables. And like, as I build the team out over the next year, it'll have an even more central part of the business.
Yeah, that's awesome. Right. Like I tell to people a lot about that. Like once you get to about that $1.5 million revenue mark, your time becomes like the most valuable resource. Otherwise you've built yourself a job. So I know you've been scaling pretty aggressively, especially this past year. So it's cool to hear that you're able to get through your replenishables in like 30 minutes or less a week. So
yeah, so like from a scaling standpoint, the biggest piece of advice I have for people is to make sure your systems are rock solid first. Like I've multiple times outscaled myself, right? Like where basically we had, too many heads at a given time and there's too much training going on and it basically swamps me where all of a sudden stuff starts to fall through the cracks. So, tools like this are, I think, critical. $1 million a year or even less, frankly, like as soon as you start getting a few products that you can reliably order, month in and month out, you could easily justify this. I think if you're making $500 a month on replenishables, the software pays for itself multiple times over, and it would take you like 10 minutes to use it.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's what we'd like to hear, right? I mean, our business is like almost all replenishables. So of course, like
yeah, I'm jealous. My space is not like that.
No, yours has higher margins though, so it's worth it. So I know we talked like a little bit about this and I get your feedback pretty frequently, but like what areas do you still think need improvement or what's a feature that you'd really like to see in Replen Pulse?
So I guess a couple things. For me, the biggest thing like that would be helpful is like if I'm seeing like, all right, here's your product. Here's the number of days you've been in stock over the last month. Here's the number of units ordered. Like maybe a column that says like change in seller count, just so I can kind of understand like what the competition looks like in that space, and maybe just have that as like a percentage, which I think Replen Pulse does have that. And then past that, it's just like number of orders, number of returns, so I can look at return rate. And I guess the biggest wish list would be cool is like a graph feature or something like that, where I can see like visualize, how many units per day over a certain time period the stuff's selling, so I can kind of plan purchases. Because right now, like Replen Pulse does streamline a lot of things for us, but we're still using Seller Central, right? Like I'm still popping into the listing and checking Keepa just to validate the numbers, which again, it's always close, but it's my own paranoia relative to like where we're spending money for our business. I think if it had that data in there, like there's a lot of that stuff that I could kind of peel out and not have to have referenced anymore.
It's really good feedback. I'm sure there's going to be a feature coming in the very soon future.
I would dig it. And it also, like, frankly, would help me relative to my team, right? Like there's certain features in Seller Central that you don't always want people to have access to.
Yeah.
So like if a lot of that stuff is built into Replen Pulse, like that makes it more secure for me to like offload more of the stuff that I'm using it for onto new team members.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that we're trying to do, and we're trying to take as much feedback as possible. Is like when you're in Replen Pulse, what other softwares are you having to go to, and what data points are you trying to get? So we're doing a lot of like the historical graphs that you were referencing, and then the sales overlay should be really soon. So it's a good idea. I think you were the first one to bring that up too, many months ago.
Selfishly, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today. It's always good chatting with you, and thanks for all your help with this process.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for making the tool. It's killer.
My pleasure. Thanks, TJ.
Yep. Cheers.